Okay, class, happy Monday. So as you know, we're going to be transitioning into our next part of the unit. By now, you should have already gone over all the content and done the discussions and the assignments over Mesopotamia, over the Neolithic Revolution, and of course over ancient Egypt. Okay, so those are the first civilizations that we covered. So you should be up to date by now. So we're going to be moving on with Unit 1 for this week, which will be ancient religions. And then later at the end of the week, we'll be hitting both India and China. But like I said, for today, we're going to be starting with ancient religions. Okay. Now, remember, one of those 5 things you needed to be a civilization is a complex institution. And for most of the early civilizations, one of the primary complex institutions that they're going to be using is religion. Okay. And so you might be asking yourself, well, how did religion get started? How did, all this come about? Well, we're going to talk about some of those early religions in world history, at least the ones we know about. Okay. So first, a little bit of some vocabulary word. You've got phonetic alphabet. The phonetic alphabet is an alphabet based on sounds. So remember, we already talked about how we had picture-based alphabets were the first ones, like cuneiform, right, and hieroglyphics. Those are both types of picture where they didn't really make a sound. Each symbol represented something, right, represented a thing. So also Torah. Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, which is the Jewish Bible, right? And then we're going to be discussing the differences between monotheism and polytheism. So monotheism is the belief of having one God, polytheism, the belief of having many gods. So first thing we want to talk about is the Phoenicians. So the Phoenicians lived near the Mediterranean Sea. They were shipbuilders and sea traders. They traded with places in North Africa, Spain, and Italy, and they had 2 major exports, which are cedar trees and purple dye. Okay, and in case you don't know, the Mediterranean Sea, if you look at my cursor at this map, is going to be right up through here, around here. So going around Greece and also around what would be today where the Phoenicians lived, which would be today around Turkey. Okay. And so these people are going to be, the major thing to know about the Phoenicians is that they developed a system of writing with a phonetic alphabet. Phonetic is based on sounds. Okay. So this is the first time that a alphabet is created and language is created that is not so much based on picture drawings, but based on sound. So you have a symbol, right? And then that symbol makes a sound. And then when you put all those symbols together and you put all the sounds together, it makes a word, right? Just like how English is, just like how all the modern languages are today. They're all phonetic alphabets. English has a phonetic alphabet, A, B, C, D, etc. Both the Greek and English alphabets are based off of their alphabet. So all the different alphabets that we have today can be traced back to this Phoenician alphabet. So if you ever wondered how we came up with all this stuff, the Phoenicians played a large role in it. Okay. So you can see here kind of like how it looked, right? So these were the Phoenician symbols. And then later the Greek language is developed. And then, of course, the English is very much based off the Greek, okay? All right, so getting into religion. So what is the purpose of religion? A lot of people wonder that, why do we have religion? Well, 1, it's to provide moral and spiritual guidance. And 2, it's to provide answers to questions people don't understand, right? Why are we here on earth? What happens after we die, etc.? So these are very important questions. There were prehistoric religions that we know of. We don't have that, obviously, prehistoric, so prehistory, pre-written record. Remember, that's what prehistoric means, just don't have written records. So we don't really know much about them. We do know that man buried items with him to take to the afterlife. That was a very common thing. Excuse me, something that would be transferred over to some modern religions like the ancient Egyptians, right? The ancient Egyptians, the whole point of building pyramids for the pharaohs was so that they could house all the items that they wanted to take to the afterlife with them. So the first major monotheistic religion in world history is called Judaism. So remember, monotheistic means the belief in one God. Obviously, there were religions before Judaism, but they were polytheistic, okay? Meaning they or at least there were other religions going on at the same time as Judaism, but they were polytheistic, meaning that they believed in many, many different gods. So Jews left the Sumerian city of Ur and settled in the land of Canaan, which is modern-day Israel, modern-day Palestine, okay? So right, I kind of discussed this before in our Mesopotamia talk. So Ur was a Sumerian city in Mesopotamia, and that Abraham, Father Abraham, who you see here in this picture right here, Abraham was living in Ur, and God came before him and said, "Hey, I've set this land of Canaan for you and the Jewish people. You are the chosen people." He made a covenant with Abraham, and so then Abraham leaves Mesopotamia and settles in Canaan and founds the first, Jewish state of Canaan. Okay. So early history contained in the Torah. So remember, the Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, or the first 5 books of the Jewish Bible, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Those are the first 5 books in the Bible, if you're familiar with that. Remember, it's monotheistic, so only belief in one God. They believe God chose Abraham to be the father of the Hebrew people. Okay. In Judaism, they refer to God as Yahweh. Okay. Yahweh is what they call God, just like in Islam they call God Allah, or in Christianity we just call God God, right? So they in the Jewish language, which is Hebrew, in Hebrew they call God Yahweh. All right. And if you look at this picture, if you're familiar with the Old Testament, this is Abraham, and he's told to go up on the mount. God tells him that to show your devotion to me, that you're going to take your only son and you're going to go to the top of the mountain and sacrifice him to me. And so he goes to the top of the mountain, and he's about to kill him to show his devotion. But then, an angel comes and stops him, and then a ram comes out of the bushes, and he sacrifices the ram instead. So it was just a sign of devotion towards Yahweh, towards God. So 1650 BC, Jews migrate to Egypt due to a drought. Jews were end up being forced into slavery. Moses then led the Jews out of Egypt around 1300 BC. So many of you have heard the story of Moses before, but this is why Moses ended up in the situation that he did, was because in around 1650 BC, there was a very bad drought in Canaan, and it caused the food shortage to be so bad that it forced the Jews to leave Canaan and move to Egypt in order to get a food source. Well, the Egyptians go to Egypt, and at first there's a very kind Pharaoh there. He takes in the Jews. The Jews become a good labor force, and they work out really well. And in fact, they actually spread. They grow in numbers. But then a later Pharaoh comes along, and he doesn't like the Jews. He thinks that there's too many of them, and so he wants to build pyramids. And so he decides, you know what? We're going to enslave the Jews to control their numbers and use them as a cheap labor force. And so the Jews for many generations, become an enslaved people, just like what we had in American history with African people, right? Then, of course, Moses is ordered by God to lead his people out of Egypt. And so Moses does that, like I said, 1300 BC. The 10 Commandments is then given to Moses. And if you're not aware, the 10 Commandments is a covenant. Covenant is a promise between God and the people, that if people obey God, God will protect his people. So it's given to Moses on Mount Sinai, and it's the basis of Jewish law. Okay, so like we said, be a civilization, you got to have written law, right? Like Code of Hammurabi was the first written law the Mesopotamians had, right? So this is a stone tablet that was given to him by God, and it, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not, commit adultery, etc., thou shalt not steal. There's 10 great commandments on there that really become the basis of Jewish law, and will end up being the basis of a lot of law for Western society and even for America today. Our foundation of our country was founded on Judeo-Christian beliefs. And a part of that Judeo-Christian beliefs is the Ten Commandments. Okay? So Hebrews had 12 tribes. So they end up growing and growing, and they end up coming up into 12 different tribes of Judaism. So the only surviving tribe, however, is the tribe of Judah, where Judaism got its name. So that's where Judaism got its name. So that you had 12 different tribes. At some point, due to constantly being conquered and enslaved, taken over, eventually those 12 tribes are going to disperse, and the only tribe that survives is the tribe of Judah, where the religion Judaism gets its name. Okay, so then later, the tribe of Judah will create the kingdom of Israel, which is in the land of Canaan, which is where Jordan is, right? The first three kings of the kingdom of Israel will be Saul, David, and Solomon. Okay, now some of you might be thinking, oh, I've heard of some of these, like David and Goliath, right? That's King David. Okay, so these are the three major first kings of Israel. Solomon built a temple for God and a house to the Ark of the Covenant, which held the Ten Commandments. The Ark of the Covenant is a very holy relic that held the Ten Commandments inside. Historians, we have never found it to this day. We don't know where the original Ten Commandments or the Ark of the Covenant is. It's still a mystery. So the only remaining wall is the Western Wall, also called the Wailing Wall. So if you go to Jerusalem today, Jerusalem is the capital city of Israel and the capital of the kingdom of Israel. And if you go there today, there's a wall that is called the Wailing Wall, and it's the only thing left of the Temple of Solomon. So if you know a little bit about the New Testament, you know that once Jesus was crucified, there was a horrible earthquake that destroyed Solomon's temple. Okay, so the only thing left standing is that Western Wall. So after Solomon's death, Jews began to be conquered by other empires like Babylon and Persia. So after King Solomon dies, after the third great king dies, they really start to be just conquered by outside forces, such as the Babylonian and Persian kingdoms. So here's a good picture right here of Israel. And so this wall right here where you see my cursor, that is the Western Wall or the Wailing Wall. So this is the only thing left of Solomon's temple. All the rest of it was destroyed, and so all the rest of these buildings were built long after the fall of Solomon's temple. And so it's a very religious and important relic to both Jews and Christians, and many Jews do take pilgrimages to Israel where they go to this wall, and they call it the Wailing Wall because they'll go up to the wall and a lot of them will cry with emotion because of this, as a remembrance of Solomon's temple. Okay, and also all the conquering that occurred of the Jewish people. Okay, so now moving on to our next ancient religion, which is Hinduism. Now, you're looking at this picture, and you're like, whoa, what's going on here with this picture? You see there's a cow that is going into the bus or trying to go into the bus. And the important thing, it's just kind of a funny thing to look at, because the important thing to know about Hinduism is they believe cows are sacred in Hinduism. And in India, of course, Hinduism is the main religion in India. And so they do not eat beef. And so one of the things you'll see if you ever go to India is you'll see a lot of cows just roaming around the cities and, just allowed to kind of live life, and you're not allowed to harm them. You're not allowed to, do anything bad to them because they're seen as holy. Okay. So obviously this is a map of India. So this is where Hinduism first develops and grows. And like I said, the vast majority of Indian people are Hindus. So Hinduism, not really a religion. It is a set of practices, rituals, and laws. So that's important to remember that that a lot of scholars and even practicing Hindus don't see it as a religion. They see it more of a set of practices, rituals, and laws. So priests gathered their hymns into 4 collections called the Vedas. The Rig Veda is the oldest set of scriptures still in active use. So the basic ideas of Hinduism, there's one true reality, Brahman, the spirit that creates and destroys. So Brahman is kind of like, what they call God, and it is the all-encompassing, main force and spirit of the world. Okay. Brahman reveals itself in millions of earthly shapes. Everything in nature is tied together by Brahman. So everything, people, animals, plants, everything on earth and the universe, according to Hinduism, is tied to the main God spirit, which is Brahman. Okay. One aspect of Brahman is Atman. Atman is the self or the soul. So everybody is connected to Brahman through Atman, through their soul, through their self. Okay. So they believe in reincarnation, which is the rebirth of the soul in a new body. So basically you have this state, this circle of life where you live your life, you die, and then you're reborn. Okay. In Hinduism, they call this moksha, the Hindu state of perfect understanding with the inner self that attains moksha will not be reincarnated, but merge with Brahman. So you're going through this endless state, right? This endless circle. And you're being reborn and you're living different lives until one day you reach the top phase and you reach moksha, okay? And you're able to finally, when you die, you don't be reborn, but you're actually going to merge and become one with Brahman again, okay? So according to the Rig Veda, there are 4 different groups of people that have been created from the body of Hindu god Purusha, the first human. So you have Brahmins, meaning the mouth. So these are basically how this is going to be the caste system. This is how the religion in Hinduism created the caste system in India. So at the very top of the pyramid, you have the Brahmins, which is the mouth of Purusha, and that are priests and the highest class, okay? Then the second, you have the Kshatriyas, which meaning arms, and those are rulers and warriors. And I'm probably totally killing these pronunciations, so you'll have to forgive me on that. Vaishyas, which meaning the legs, so these are your landowners, merchants, and artisans. And then finally, you have the Sutras, meaning the feet, and those are going to be your servants, your slaves, the lowest class. Okay. So because of this belief, because of this religious belief, remember, it's a complex institution that controls this civilization. It creates the caste system. So the caste system basically is a class system, okay? But unlike other class systems, you really cannot move up the ladder, okay? If you're at the bottom caste system, then you can't move to the second caste system because it's literally in their religion that if you're in that bottom caste system, then you're there for a reason, okay? It's because you didn't do what you're supposed to do in the previous life to move up to the next caste. And so therefore, it's your job to go through your life in this bottom rung until you achieve what you're supposed to achieve so you can be in a higher caste system when you are reborn again. So to share food or have any contact with a lower ranking person is a risk to contamination. The lowest caste is called the untouchables. So literally, you cannot, your goal is to achieve moksha. So you want to, during your lifespan, to achieve every little thing you can, to do everything you can for yourself, for your Atman, right, for your soul, to get to that next level. So you're not really supposed to help the person underneath you because that's their job, okay? That's their duty, their goal to be in your caste system. So the lowest class is called the untouchables. Literally, those are like the lowest of the low. The slaves even are servants, and they're literally untouchable, meaning that they're so down at the bottom that for you to even come in contact with them could cause you contamination and to not be allowed to be reborn into a higher caste or to achieve moksha. All right. So once again, here is the pyramid, the caste system in India of the Hindu religion. So obviously at the very top, you've got gods. Then you've got the Brahmin, the priests and academics. Second tier, the warriors and kings. Third tier, the merchants and landowners. And then at the very bottom, the commoners, priests and servants. And then, of course, even below that are the untouchables, right? So even below that are the untouchables. So this is how the caste system works in India. So castes are explained by reincarnation and karma. Karma are actions determined by your future state, ethical law, and cause and effect. So you may have heard of this before. Like if somebody were to do something bad and then later on in the day that something bad happens to them, you would say, oh, that's karma. Well, karma comes from Hinduism, and it basically means what are your morals, what are the ethical causes and effects of your life, right? So if you have good karma, then if you die in Hinduism, you'll be reincarnated into a higher caste system. If you have bad karma, then when you die, you'll either stay in the same caste system or most likely go down one level in the caste system, okay? So moral behavior in one life guarantees birth into a higher caste. Each caste has its own duty. Hindu proverb, it is better to do one's own duty badly than to do another's duty well. So like I said, going back, it's all about duty and honor with this caste system. So for a king, a warrior, let's say a warrior in the second caste tier there, for a warrior to help out a servant with their duty would be wrong for him to do that according to Hinduism, because he needs to focus on his own duty, doing his own duty well, because it doesn't help him to help someone else do their duty well and then negate or neglect his own duty, okay? All right, so moksha is the release from rebirth in Hinduism, the spiritual goal of release from reincarnation, like we said. There are 3 different ways to achieve moksha: the path of right thinking, the path of right action, and the path of religious devotion. Okay? So you can kind of see how the caste system works here. So you're going to start out with the path of right thinking at the bottom. So you need to get your mind right. You need to understand what your duties are to achieve the next tier. Then the path of right action, where you're actually having good karma, right? You're acting upon those good actions. And then finally, the last tier, right? The path of religious devotion. So priests, right, are at the very tip top. So priests totally devote themselves to Hinduism, to karma. And so when they die, if they had good karma and they did everything correctly, they completed all their duties, then they'll, instead of being reincarnated, they'll become one with Brahman, according to Hinduism, okay? All right, so lastly, we're going to talk about Confucianism, which really, kind of took over in China, all right? So Confucianism is not a religion at all. It is an ethical system. So unlike, Hinduism, which is polytheistic, meaning that they believe in many, many different gods, right? There's a lot of different gods in Hinduism, a lot of different spirits, right? Confucianism doesn't really get religious at all, to where, we talked about that Hinduism isn't really a religion. It's more of a way of life. But it at least has religious aspects. It answers the question of what happens after you die. How do you, this the cycle of rebirth. It talks about different gods and spirits. So it has a religious aspect to it. Confucianism does not at all. It literally is ethical system. It's just a way of living. Okay. So Confucius, who's a person, believed in social order and good government, and was possible if society were organized around the 5 basic relationships. Okay, so he believed that the best relationship and the best government that you can have is based upon these relationships. 1, a relationship between ruler and subject. 2, father and son. 3, husband and wife. 4, older brother and younger brother. And then finally, friend and friend. All right. So you base these relationships over these 5 things, and it makes for a better society. Okay. So Confucius also called for filial piety. Filial piety is respect of parents and elders. He laid the foundations for professional bureaucracies with trained civil servants who received jobs based on merit. Meritocracy, which is where this coin was phrased from Confucianism, is the most qualified person gets the job. Okay, so for most generations, the person who got the job usually was, obviously like the prince, right? The son of the king, the prince gets to become the king, right? Or the son, the business owner's son is going to be the one who takes over the business next. In government, usually it's all about who you know, who your connections are, right? Well, Confucius believed that none of that should be the case, that it should be completely based on who's best for the job. That if you have the best experience, if you have you're the smartest person, if you're, have the best qualifications, then you should be the one who gets the job, no matter who you're the son or the daughter of, no matter who, what connections you have. If you're best for the job, you should get it. Okay, that's what meritocracy is. Okay, and so like we said, this is just a ethical system that Confucius came up with to try and make life better, societies better, and it became very crucial in the society of China. Okay. All right, so that is it. Remember, if you have any questions, please email me, william.parr@gcssk12.net. Also, make sure, there are notes that go along with this. It would really, you don't turn in those notes, but it would really help you to fill those notes out and to keep them to help you study on tests. Hope y'all have a great day.